Anger in Afghanistan among the Hazara minority. They complain they've been overlooked by a major government development project, further deepening their plight. Are the Hazaras really being marginalised, or are they being manipulated by outside influences? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Fuliba Thibault. They are an ethnic minority in Afghanistan who have long complained of discrimination. Thousands of Hazaras took to the streets of Kabul on Monday, accusing President Ashraf Ghani of excluding them from a multi-million-dollar power line project. Well, it's now been postponed while a government review is held. The protests also shining a light on the Hazaras' long-running grievances. We'll explore that with our guests in just a moment, but first, Mohammed Val reports from Kabul.
The Hazara constitute a sizable minority inside Afghanistan. Their main homeland is in the central provinces of Bamyan and Ghazni. They claim historic marginalization, and in fact, there is a lot of information in history books about the persecution of the Hazara, including a time when they suffered a mass deportation to Pakistan. Until now, they also claim that they have been excluded from basic services by the government. Right now, the Hazara are protesting because they say that they still suffer discrimination and marginalization by the government, and their areas in the central Afghanistan provinces of Bamyan and Ghazni are among the poorest. They don't have basic amenities, they don't have electricity, and they don't even have mended roads.
Well, the Hazaras are one of Afghanistan's largest ethnic minorities, making up an estimated 10 to 20% of the population. They've faced persecution for hundreds of years, most recently by the Taliban, who ruled Afghanistan until 2001. Life improved after the invasion by U.S. troops, when the Hazara were able to gain greater access to politics, civil service jobs and universities. But as a predominantly Shia Muslim minority, they continue to face threats from armed groups such as ISIL. Well, joining us now from Kabul is Abdul Basir Azimi, who's spokesman for the Afghan Ministry of Energy and Water. Thank you very much, Mr. Azimi, for being with us on Inside Story. So the power line project is on standby for now. Will the final route of this project go through Bamyan province? Will the people of Bamyan finally have access to electricity?
Thank you very much. It is totally financial and technical issue, and it's not subject to any kinds of discrimination. Financial resources are so limited in Afghanistan, and we have to utilize our financial resources effectively and efficiently. Changing the route from Salang to Bamyan at this point of time will delay 28 months power supply to 12 provinces. And also the Bamyan route is 80 kilometers longer than Salang, and it's cost 40 million more than Salang route, and also take 10 months more time comparing to Salang route.
Okay.
If we want to shift the route from Salang to Bamyan again, we should replan and redo all study, survey, procurement process again for Bamyan route, which takes optimistically another 80 months.
Okay, so you maintain this is a financial issue, but as you know, Mr. Azimi, Hazara leaders have said that the routing of this line away from Bamyan province is evidence of the enduring bias against the Hazara community in Afghanistan. The people who traveled to Kabul this week did not just come from Bamyan province, but from all over Afghanistan to protest about their plight. What do you respond to them? What do you say to those who say that this is just evidence, another sign, another example of the Hazaras being marginalized by the Afghan government?
It is totally financial and technical issue, as I said, and I can provide you some evidence about more cost, more time, and also there are some social and security consideration about the Bamyan route, and it's not relevant, it's not subject to any kind of discrimination, and we should say because of the financial and technical issue, just we chose the Saleng route is not a subject to any discrimination.
Okay, Mr. Azimi, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. Abdul Basir Azimi, spokesman for the Afghan Ministry of Energy and Water. He was joining us there from Kabul. Thank you. Well, let's now bring in our other guests for today's Inside Story. In Kabul, Habib Wardak, good governance and anti-corruption activist. In Birmingham, in the UK, Rahula Yaqubi, Associate Fellow at the Human Security Centre. Rahula is also a Hazara who fled Afghanistan at the age of 12. And also in Kabul, Afghanistan, Thomas Rutig, Co-Director of the Afghanistan Analysts Network. Gentlemen, thank you all. Welcome to Inside Story. If I may start with you, Yaqubi, in Birmingham. Mr. Azimi, the spokesman for the Ministry of Energy and Water there, said that this project and the fact that the power line is not going through Bamyan province right now is a financial issue rather than politics at play here. He says it has nothing to do with the marginalization of the Hazara community. What do you respond?
I think, frankly, I heard Mr. Azimi, and I've never heard so much nonsense in one sentence, because he brought up the economic question himself, although it was entirely government's decision, and they asked Fitchner, a consultancy firm based in Germany, to do a study of how best Afghanistan's electricity could be supplied from Turkmenistan to eastern Afghanistan and Kabul. And Fitchner, throughout his studies and their studies and surveys, came up with a plan which was agreed and accepted by the Afghan government. And now, they have somehow, without following due process, decided to divert the line as it was originally planned, because it crosses Bamyan. Now, it makes sense for Afghanistan's future to take the original plan as it was, because Bamyan is resource rich. It's historically very rich part of Afghanistan, and in order for Afghanistan as a country to prosper, you'd need Bamyan to be at the center of it.
Right.
Now, I heard Mr. Azimi discuss about, they'll have a $40 million shortfall of funds in order to be able to fund the project going through Bamyan. And if they stick to the Saleng Pass, they'll still need to spend millions and tens of millions of dollars to give electricity to Bamyan.
Okay, let's hear from...
It frankly doesn't make sense. And
let's hear from Habib Wardak about what's at stake here. Habib, in Kabul, several countries are involved in this power line project. It's coming from Turkmenistan all the way to Pakistan. What is at stake here for the Afghan government, and why is there so much discontent among the Hazara community about this project and the way it's been run so far?
As an Afghan, let me appreciate that. Let me appreciate the contemporary Afghanistan, that we are living in an Afghanistan where one can civilly go out and ask for their rights, unlike 15 years back where you could go out with AK-47 and demand for your rights. We are living in a much better Afghanistan today. Looking at the demonstrations yesterday and what my Hazara brothers were asking for is a pure technical issue. Let's please not think on political lines. Let's please not think on ethnical lines. I think there has been, to some extent, distortion of reality by Hazara leaders in order to mobilize their masses. The understanding is that, the question is that we don't know what does our brothers from Bamyan want, whether they want transitional lines, or is it that they, transmission lines, or is it that they want electricity. The president has promised a tenfold electricity for what has been promised to the people of Bamyan. This will, demonstrations like that could tarnish our image for the future international investors, and then you have neighboring countries who could well take advantage of this, and the electricity could be diverted from Afghanistan to, for example, from Iran to Pakistan.
Okay.
So we have to be very careful not to make ethnical issue out of technical issue.
Okay, let's hear from Thomas Rutig in Kabul. Thomas, Mr. Wardak in Kabul says this is a distortion of reality. do you think this power project is evidence, indeed, as the Hazaras say, of their marginalisation? Is there today a real reason for them to be, to feel that they're persecuted by this Afghan government?
Well, I think we cannot answer these questions only from the current situation. You have in the beginning alluded to the history of the Hazaras who have been persecuted in Afghanistan. But we also have to say that after 2001 and already earlier during the war against the Soviets, the Hazaras themselves have done a lot to emancipate themselves. I think what is at stake here is there's a lack of transparency. I think if the governments, and I'm talking in plural here, would have been more transparent about what is planned from the beginning, a lot of that, what is happening now, could have been avoided. One point I really would like to make is that it is not only Hazara communities who still have not seen much change in their social life after 2001, despite all the billions of dollars that had been invested in Afghanistan. It's the same in other parts of the countries, and I think it's also sometimes a lack of really knowledge and information about how lives among in the different regions amongst the different ethnic groups is. I think
but
in this context,
specifically about the Hazaras, Thomas Surtig, specifically, just so our international viewers can understand this a bit more, specifically about the Hazaras, is there a real reason today for them to claim that they're still being marginalised in Afghan society?
Well, according to the law, that's one of the positive changes after 2001. They are not anymore, but these feelings and ethnic tensions have existed and they continue on. I think on both sides there are a lot of people who are reasonable, but there are also some people who want to fire up ethnic emotions and want to translate that into political influence. That's one part of the story. Whereas, of course, protests against I would call it social shortcomings, and there's a lack of energy in Bamyan, but also in other parts of the area of the country, even here in Kabul, that's not too brilliant. So there are more people who also would have reason to demonstrate. And I think Afghans themselves, who went through all these years of war, can think for themselves and make up their mind about what's necessary for their country.
Right.
And I would not call all these protesters as people who have been manipulated from somewhere.
Okay, Mr. Yacobi, what precisely are the grievances of your community today? What do you see as the injustices that the Hazaras face on a daily basis in Afghanistan?
I think in order to fully understand this, we need a broader perspective. Now, we're talking about a group of people whom until 1920s, it was legal for non-Hazaras, primarily Pashtuns, to own the Hazaras as slaves. So, you know, anti-Hazara sentiments and discrimination against the Hazaras has been ingrained throughout the centuries into the social and political fabrics of Afghan society, and it does not exclude Afghan institutions. Now, as our friends were talking, but you know, the discrimination that is felt by non-Pashtuns within Afghanistan is so tangible. It's felt by the Tajiks, it's felt by the Hazaras, it's felt by the Uzbeks.
Right.
And now, if we are talking specifically about the Hazaras, say for example, the Hazaras are stuck in the middle of Taliban who persecute them and kill them and massacre them in their thousands, and who still continue to do as infidels and animals. But then you have an Afghan government led by Ashraf Ghani, who's surrounded by people who have been writing and concerning and openly talking about the revival of Pashtun dominance in Afghanistan, and who've written about the decline of Pashtuns post-Second World War.
But the situation has...
Now, they are the decision makers.
I understand what you're saying, but let me just say this. The situation has improved, though, hasn't it, since 2001? I mean, there are several Hazara ministers in government now. The second vice president is Hazara. The second deputy chief executive is also Hazara. Many say that the fact that the community is well represented in government is evidence that things have indeed improved and that they are part of Afghan society today.
Yes, and Hazaras have places in government. Now, for example, the second vice president is a Hazara, and he confessed himself last week that they're just their tokens. They're just political tokens representing a minority. Now, for example, the powerful Mohammed Mahaqiq, who's the second deputy to Abdullah, the chief executive, he said around the cabinet table, people close to Ashraf Ghani, and Ashraf Ghani himself treats us as strangers. Now, if you look at government institutions, discrimination against ethnic minorities are endemic. They are systematically pursued as a strategy to bring back Pashtun dominance of Afghan institutions. For example, if you look through the list of foreign diplomatic missions that Afghanistan hold across the world, there are 62. There are over 60, and out of all the 60 missions, only 2 Hazaras are ambassadors within them.
Okay.
And if you look at the health ministry, for example, out of 18,000 personnel employed by the public health ministry, only 3% are the Hazaras.
Okay.
Now, let me tell you this. In 2008, Michael Sampel, who was the deputy representative of the EU in Afghanistan, he said, the Hazaras produce the most enthusiastic and the most educated and dedicated youth in the country. And what happened to those enthusiastic and young and educated? Why are they not being, given any chance of going through the Afghan civil society? For example,
okay.
25,000
I know you could go on about this, but
I
do want to hear from Mr. Wardak in Kabul, because again, Mr. Yacobi, there are those who will say that the Hazaras today are trying to get more than what they should legally have. But let me just bring in Mr. Wardak on this issue of what Mr. Yacobi said was the endemic discrimination of ethnic minorities in Afghanistan. Do you share this view?
Discrimination is wrong. Marginalization is wrong. And this is not going to get Afghanistan anywhere. This is probably the last thing Afghanistan requires. But I don't necessarily agree with Mr. Yacobi, because if you look at the civil administration in Kabul, if you look at the parliament, let me just pinpoint Ghazni province, for example. It's majority of them are Pashtuns, and then it's followed by the Tajiks and Hazaras. You have none of the Tajiks and Pashtuns representing Ghazni province in the parliament. All of its members are Hazaras. But yet again, it saddens me a lot when we think about those lines, because this is the last thing we need in Afghanistan. And talking about this specific issue of TUTAB, this has nothing to do with ethnicity. This has nothing to do with marginalizing Bamyan and people of Bamyan. The people of Bamyan has as much right on Afghanistan as a person from Kandahar. This has to do everything with technical and economic issues. It's 80+ kilometers of long distance. It's about delay of electricity to 6 million population of Afghanistan by 28 months. Now, if you want to fulfill the desires of the people of Bamyan, that means delaying, that's about 1.5 million, but that means delaying electricity to 4.5 Afghans in the eastern and southern Afghanistan by another 28 months. The question is, when I say distortion of reality, or having a proper conscience about what it is it that they really want the transmission lines, or is it that they want the electricity? Because they were shouting that they want electricity, and the president has clearly promised them tenfold of what it was actually planned for Bamyan. So, and then you have the neighboring countries calling a fatwa to go and demonstrate against the oppressive government.
On that,
now,
on that particular point, let me hear from Thomas Rotek on that. Sorry to interrupt you, Thomas Rotek. There are claims that outside forces are at play here. There have been accusations that Iran is behind this. The Hazara are Shia, of course. Iran backs the Hazara. Accusations that Iran is inciting these protests. Are these accusations founded? Is there an outside influence here?
I think that's always a very easy explanation, which very often is pulled off here in Afghanistan, that if things are happening which are not very pleasant, that an outside hand must be behind it. As I said before, I think most of the people who went to the protest went there because they have legitimate concerns. But on the other hand, it also reflects amongst some limited view. They don't see how their Pashtun or Tajik or other brothers in Afghanistan are also suffering about shortcomings in the socio-economic
But what's the nature of the
infrastructure,
relationship today between
and services?
What's the nature of the relationship today between Iran and Hazara leaders in Afghanistan?
Well, some of them have contacts, of course, with Iran, but I think in those demonstrations it was mainly social activists and civil society people who have actually organized it, and they organized it in a very peaceful way. I wish that demonstration in my country in Germany would be so peaceful from time to time. There is probably political or the politicization and instrumentalization by leaders here also in Afghanistan. We should not forget that some of those who spoke in the protests also have been in the government when this agreement about TTAP was signed in the first place. So that's also about winning back political influence and capital. But still, the majority of the people, I think, are neither led from Iran or even from the Hazara parties here. That was a very broad movement which brought people into the streets. And again, I say it was, I think it's legitimate, and also the President Ghani said it is legitimate. It was organized very well, and I think it's a legitimate expression of opinion.
Okay.
But in the end, the government needs to decide what it wants to do.
Okay, Mr. Yacobi, I do want to get your response on these accusations that we've heard in several quarters of Iran being involved in all this. There have been allegations that Iran finances certain Hazara MPs, even allegations that Iran has been sending young Hazaras to fight alongside Bashar al-Assad's forces in Syria. So I think a lot of people would want to know today what the nature of the relationship is between Hazara leaders, the Hazara community in Afghanistan, and Iran.
I think it's pretty preposterous and grotesque to accuse those thousands and thousands of people who came out to the streets of Kabul somehow agents of outsiders, because it is a very cheap ploy employed by Ashraf Ghani's men, who continuously and purposefully vilify the people who just demand one thing, and they just want justice and equality for the people of Afghanistan, not just for Bamyan, not just for my birth village, whom the people will not be affected by the transmission line of Bamyan, but they went out and protesting, requesting and demanding justice and equality. And now, if anything, the politicians in Afghanistan have learned over the last 15 years, where they've squandered Afghanistan's best chance of survival with corruption and misgovernment, is that other Afghanistan is possible. A different politics in Afghanistan is possible. Hazaras have demonstrated it time and again through peaceful and civil protests and movements, that Afghanistan can become a home for every citizen of that country. But unfortunately, the people from the other side who benefit from the marginalization of ethnic minorities seek to vilify the Hazaras as somehow agents of outsiders. It is really preposterous. And for example, if a Hazara demands equality of citizenship for all the Uzbeks and the Tajiks and the Pashtuns, he's automatically accused of being an agent of outsiders, specifically Iran, just because the Hazaras are Shia Muslims. And you can't deny that Hazara leaders historically have been Shia clerics, and they have had their links to Shia centers of gravity in Iran and Iraq. And now, our friend from Kabul, Mr. Wardak, mentioned that the process of TTAP is purely technical. I think nothing in Afghanistan politics is technical. Everything is political, and everything is looked at through the prism of ethnic centrality of Pashtuns.
Okay, let's leave it there. Thank you so very much for an interesting discussion, Habib Wardak, Ruhollah Yacobi, and Thomas Ruttig. And thank you as well for watching. You can also watch this program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Fuli Batibo, and the whole team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.